You know that moment when the universe decides to play a cosmic joke, and you are the punchline? That was me, Zrixpulitan, third-ranked diplomatic officer from Vexura Prime, assigned to the Galactic Cooperative's most unpredictable member species, humans. They are just mammals with anxiety and thumbs, my supervisor had said, slapping a dossier onto my desk. How hard could it be? Those words haunt me now as I hide behind an ornamental shrub at the Galactic Embassy's annual reception, watching Ambassador Leonard Thompson's face turn an alarming shade of red. Let me back up before we get to the part where everyone starts running. 3 standard cycles ago, humans joined the Galactic Cooperative after we discovered them accidentally. And by accidentally, I mean one of our scout ships crashed on their moon, and instead of panicking like sensible beings, the humans were thrilled. They sent a welcome party with gift baskets. Who does that? My first meeting with Ambassador Thompson went surprisingly well. He was tall for a human but shorter than me. My species, the Vexurans, average around 7 feet tall with iridescent blue skin and 4 arms. We look intimidating to most species, but Thompson just grinned and extended his hand. Good to meet you, Officer Pulitan. Call me Lenny. Everyone does. I extended my upper right arm cautiously. Humans have this bizarre ritual called handshaking, which involves grasping appendages and moving them up and down. Our cultural briefing called it an archaic disease-spreading practice that somehow survived their technological advancement. The pleasure is reciprocal, Ambassador Thompson, I replied formally. Lenny, he corrected, still smiling. And loosen up. This isn't one of those stuffy Zentarian functions where everyone stands perfectly still for 6 hours pretending to photosynthesize. I should have recognized the warning signs right then. Humans are different. While most species in the cooperative evolved to avoid conflict through elaborate social hierarchies and communication protocols, humans seem to actively seek it out. Their entertainment consists largely of watching simulated conflict. Their fitness routines involve voluntary physical stress. Their cuisine often contains chemicals that cause pain. They are, in a word, baffling. But the most terrifying thing about humans? Their anger progression. Most species display anger in predictable ways. The Morgolians inflate their threat sacs. The Prixian hive mind changes color from blue to orange. The Zentarians release spores that induce mild hallucinations. This all perfectly reasonable warning systems. Humans, however, have stages. And understanding these stages is crucial to galactic diplomacy and, more importantly, survival. Which brings me to today's disaster. The reception was proceeding according to standard diplomatic protocol. Various ambassadors mingled awkwardly, consuming nutritional substances and exchanging rehearsed pleasantries. I was monitoring the human delegation, who were being uncharacteristically subdued. Then Ambassador Grok of the Plibulan Federation approached Lenny with what appeared to be innocent curiosity. Human Thompson, Grok burbled through his moisture membrane, I have been studying your species' historical archives. Is it accurate that your primitive ancestors once believed your star was pulled across the sky by a flaming chariot? I froze. Our research indicated that humans are sensitive about their evolutionary path. They don't like being reminded that merely 8,000 cycles ago, they were still figuring out which berries wouldn't kill them. But Lenny surprised me. He laughed. Yeah, mythology is wild. But hey, your species thought stars were the eyeballs of dead warriors, right? Ambassador Grok's moisture membrane pulsated dangerously. That is sacred cosmology, not primitive mythology, human. Lenny raised his hands in the universal gesture of appeasement. No offense intended. All species have origin stories. It's fascinating stuff. I relaxed slightly. Crisis averted. But Ambassador Grok wasn't finished. I find it amusing that a species so recently evolved can claim equal status in the cooperative. Your kind still requires sleep. Every day you become unconscious and vulnerable for hours. How primitive. Several nearby diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Sleep is a sensitive subject for humans. They spend approximately 1/3 of their lives unconscious and are bizarrely defensive about it. I noticed Lenny's smile tighten. This was stage 1 of human anger, the fixed smile. "We all have our biological quirks," Lenny replied evenly. "Your species dissolves into individual cells during magnetic storms. We each have our challenges." Ambassador Grok's moisture membrane turned an alarming purple. "That is a sacred transformation process, not a quirk, human. Perhaps if your species had more time to evolve beyond your primitive state, you would understand the distinction." Lenny's smile hadn't moved, but his eyes had narrowed. "We had entered stage 2, controlled voice. Ambassador," he said with deliberate calmness, "I understand you are curious about human biology. But repeatedly calling us primitive comes across as disrespectful." This was my cue to intervene. I stepped forward. "Ambassador Grok, perhaps you would enjoy the nutritional arrangement near the atmospheric regulators. The chef has prepared a specially formulated gelatinous protein matrix to your exact specifications." But Grok, oblivious to the danger, continued. "The human appears upset. Is this the emotional volatility your species is known for? How fascinating. Does this mean you will soon engage in one of your famous temper tantrums like your offspring?" I watched in horror as Lenny's neck reddened. Stage 3, physical signs. Ambassador Thompson took a deep breath. "Ambassador Grok, I'm trying very hard to be diplomatic here. Maybe we should change the subject." This was the moment when any sensible being would retreat. But Ambassador Grok, whose species evolved without predators on their homeworld, lacked the survival instinct most of us possess. "Oh, is this human diplomacy? Avoiding difficult conversations when confronted with your evolutionary shortcomings? Your species' defensiveness is most revealing. Perhaps this explains why your planet remains divided into territorial nations despite achieving space travel. Primitive social structures for a primitive species." The room went quiet, too quiet. I looked at Lenny and saw his jaw was clenched. Stage 4, the jaw clench. Every cooperative species with predator ancestry recognized what was happening. The Iraqi ambassador quietly slid behind a column. The Zentarian delegation began releasing calming spores. The Morgolians deflated their threat sacs in submission. But Ambassador Grok continued, oblivious. "I mean, no offense, human. It is merely objective observation. Your species is young, underdeveloped. Your brains are still evolving. It is why you make illogical decisions based on feelings rather than rational." "Ambassador Grok," Lenny interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. "I'm going to stop you right there." The humans in the delegation had gone still. They recognized what was happening before anyone else. One of them, diplomatic attaché Mira Patel, began slowly moving toward the exits, making subtle hand gestures to the catering staff. Grok, completely missing the signals, laughed wetly. "The human wishes to stop me? With what authority? Your species has been space-capable for less than a century. My civilization had mapped your entire galaxy before your kind had discovered fire." That's when it happened. Leonard Thompson, official representative of Earth to the Galactic Cooperative, ambassador plenipotentiary of humanity, straightened his posture and said the words that would be forever burned into my memory. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The reaction was immediate. Ambassador Creel of the predatory vast confederacy literally dove under a refreshment table. The Iraqi delegation vanished in a cloud of emergency camouflage spores. 3 different species activated personal shields. I myself began backing toward the nearest exit, all 4 of my arms raised in the traditional posture of submission. Only Ambassador Grok remained oblivious to the danger, his moisture membrane bubbling with amusement. "The human is annoyed? Is this supposed to frighten me? Your emotional states are of no consequence in diplomatic." He never finished that sentence, because Lenny did something unexpected and therefore terrifying. He smiled again. But this wasn't the fixed diplomatic smile from earlier. This was different. This smile showed teeth. "Let me explain something, Ambassador," Lenny said, his voice eerily calm. Humans have a saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Do you know what that means? Ambassador Grok's translator struggled with the idiom, but he responded with unearned confidence. Your species consumes insects with sweetened plant secretions? How primitive. That's when I decided to abandon diplomatic protocol entirely. I triggered the embassy's environmental controls, activating the atmospheric dampeners that released calming pheromones throughout the reception hall. But it was too late. Ambassador Thompson had entered stage 5, the speech. You know what's funny about humans, Ambassador Grok? Lenny began, casually picking up a glass of water. Everyone thinks we are dangerous because we are emotional. But that's not it at all. He took a sip, and I swear by the 3 moons of my homeworld, every predator species in that room tracked the movement of his hand like it might suddenly become a weapon. We are not dangerous because we get angry, Lenny continued. We are dangerous because we are so patient before we get angry. We endure. We tolerate. We forgive. Again and again and again. He set down the glass with deliberate precision. But when we finally say we are annoyed, that means all that patience, all that tolerance, all that forgiveness, it's gone. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. And what happens next isn't emotional at all. It's perfectly rational, calculated, precise. Ambassador Grok's moisture membrane had stopped bubbling. Perhaps finally sensing danger, he began slowly backing away. You see, Ambassador, Lenny continued, following him with measured steps, humans don't just have emotions. We study them. We weaponize them. When I say I'm annoyed, it's not a warning that I might lose control. It's a warning that I'm about to exercise it very, very specifically. By now, half the reception hall had cleared out. The remaining diplomats were either frozen in fascination or physically unable to flee due to their biology. The human delegation, surprisingly, seemed completely relaxed, almost bored, as if this were a routine occurrence. Ambassador Grok finally showed a glimmer of survival instinct. Perhaps I have misinterpreted certain aspects of human development, a regrettable cultural misunderstanding. Oh, absolutely, Lenny agreed, his smile widening. Cultural misunderstandings happen all the time. That's why we are all here, right? To learn from each other. He casually picked up a small decorative object from a nearby table, some kind of crystalline paperweight, and began tossing it lightly from hand to hand. For instance, did you know humans have a unique response to being cornered? Most species either fight or flee. But humans? We get creative. The paperweight moved faster between his hands. Your species evolved in shallow pools, right? No predators, no competition, just floating around and filter feeding. Must have been nice. Toss. Catch. Toss. Catch. Humans evolved on a death world. Everything wanted to eat us. We were slower, weaker, and softer than everything around us. Do you know how we survived? Toss. Catch. We noticed things. Patterns. Weaknesses. Like how your species can't tolerate calcium carbonate. It disrupts your cellular cohesion, doesn't it? Even small amounts can be problematic. Ambassador Grok's moisture membrane went completely still. This paperweight, Lenny said casually, is made from marble. Primarily calcium carbonate, if I'm not mistaken. What happened next would later be described in the official incident report as an unfortunate allergic reaction. Ambassador Grok suddenly remembered an urgent appointment elsewhere in the galaxy and fled the reception at speed, leaving a trail of distressed moisture droplets. As the tension in the room dissipated, I cautiously approached Ambassador Thompson. That was diplomatically unorthodox, I ventured. Lenny turned to me, and suddenly he was smiling his normal smile again, all traces of the predator gone. Sometimes you need to speak a language everyone understands, he said with a wink. That night, I updated the official human diplomatic guidelines with a new primary directive for all species. If a human says they are actually getting annoyed, create distance immediately. This is not a warning. This is your only chance to escape. Little did I know I would soon need this advice myself. But that, my friends, is where our story really begins. 3 standard weeks after the Grok incident, as it came to be known, I found myself assigned to an even more precarious position, cultural liaison to the first human trade delegation visiting Galactic's central market. Your experience with humans makes you uniquely qualified, my supervisor, Grand Administrator Velox, explained while systematically reorganizing the gravity crystals on her desk. My experience? I questioned, all 4 of my arms gesticulating in disbelief. You mean when I watched Ambassador Thompson nearly cause an interspecies incident by threatening a diplomat with a paperweight? Velox's eye stalk swiveled toward me disapprovingly. The official record states Ambassador Grok suffered an unexpected allergic reaction. Besides, you survived. That alone qualifies you above most candidates. I couldn't argue with that logic. After the reception, applications for human diplomatic positions had dropped by 78%. The Iraqi had formally requested a buffer zone of at least 20 feet between their representatives and any human delegation. The Zentarians had started wearing calcium carbonate detection devices, but the delegation arrives tomorrow, Velox continued. 5 humans, led by Trade Representative Jasmine Carver. Their mission is to establish direct trade routes between Earth and 16 cooperative worlds. I felt all 3 of my hearts sink simultaneously. 16 worlds? That's unprecedented for a newcomer species. Humans move quickly, Velox replied, her tone suggesting this was not necessarily a compliment. The next morning I waited at Docking Bay 94, nervously adjusting my translator pendant. The human ship, named Prosperity, how optimistic, was surprisingly elegant for such a young spacefaring species. It docked with precision that even the notoriously particular Prixian engineers would approve of. The airlock cycled, and out stepped 5 humans of varying heights, colorations, and apparent ages. Their leader was immediately identifiable, a dark-skinned female with tightly coiled hair pulled back in an elaborate arrangement and wearing what my cultural database identified as a power suit. Representative Carver? I stepped forward with my primary arms extended in greeting, secondary arms carefully at my sides to avoid overwhelming them with limbs. I am Zrix Puleton, your assigned cultural liaison. Jasmine Carver's handshake was firm, controlled, professional. Officer Puleton, a pleasure to meet you. I have heard good things. I blinked in surprise. You have? She smiled, revealing perfectly aligned teeth. Ambassador Thompson mentioned you, said you kept your cool during that diplomatic hiccup last month. A hiccup. Humans had such a gift for understatement. Let me introduce my team, she continued, gesturing to the others. Our legal advisor, Omar Bakri. Financial analyst, Alexis Morgan. Logistics specialist, Thomas Petrovich. And our technical consultant, Dr. Vivian Wong. Each human nodded respectfully as they were introduced. They seemed so harmless. It was difficult to reconcile these polite professionals with the species that had the entire Galactic Cooperative updating their threat assessment protocols. Welcome to Galactic Central, I said, attempting to sound reassuring rather than nervous. I have arranged accommodations suitable for your physiology, including appropriate atmospheric conditions, nutritional options, and rest facilities. Much appreciated, Representative Carver replied. We are excited to get started. The sooner we establish these trade routes, the sooner Earth can begin sharing our unique resources with the cooperative. I led them toward the transit platform, explaining the day's agenda. This morning you will have orientation at the Trade Commission headquarters. After your midday nutritional break, we have meetings scheduled with representatives from the first 3 worlds on your list, Zentaria, Moglev, and Vask Prime. Dr. Wong, the technical consultant, frowned slightly. Only 3 on the first day? We were hoping to meet with at least 6. 6? I nearly tripped over my own feet. That would be highly unusual. Negotiations typically proceed at a measured pace. Time is money, Alexis Morgan, the financial analyst, interjected. Earth's economy can't wait a standard year for basic trade protocols. This was my first glimpse of the infamous human impatience. In the cooperative, trade negotiations often span decades. The Zentarians once spent 3 centuries debating the export tax on a particular type of decorative moss. We will do our best to accommodate your timeline, I assured them, while mentally calculating how to rearrange the carefully structured diplomatic schedule without offending 16 different species. But the morning orientation proceeded without incident. The humans absorbed information at an alarming rate, interrupting frequently with questions that revealed both their inexperience and their ambition. So there's no centralized currency? Alexis Morgan asked, looking genuinely baffled. The cooperative uses a system of value equivalencies, I explained. Each world determines value according to their own economic models, then transactions are calculated through the universal value matrix. Inefficient, she muttered, tapping notes into her data pad. Omar Bakri, the legal advisor, was equally direct. These regulatory frameworks have 17 different standard measures for what constitutes food safety. But how does anything ever get approved? Very carefully, I replied, which earned unexpected laughter from the humans. By midday, I was cautiously optimistic. The humans were blunt, certainly, and moved at a pace that bordered on frenetic by cooperative standards, but they were professional, controlled. Perhaps the incident with Ambassador Thompson had been an anomaly. How wrong I was. Our first meeting was with the Zentarian Trade Guild. We gathered in one of their atmospheric chambers, which was filled with the dense, humid air their species preferred. The humans were provided with breathing apparatus, which they accepted without complaint. Zentarian Guild Master Floxy entered, accompanied by 7 assistants. Each moved with the characteristic slow grace of their species, taking nearly 10 minutes to arrange themselves on their sitting pads. I noticed Representative Carver's right foot beginning to tap silently against the floor. Stage 1 of human impatience, rhythmic movement. After the traditional 20 minutes of silent contemplation that begins all Zentarian meetings, Guild Master Floxy finally spoke. We welcome Earth's representatives to this preliminary discussion of potential future trade considerations. Representative Carver smiled professionally. Thank you, Guildmaster. We are eager to establish a mutually beneficial relationship. Eagerness is a trait of the immature, Floxy responded, his speech tendrils waving gently. The Zentarian Trade Guild has existed for 12,000 cycles. We prefer thoroughness to speed. I saw Carver's smile tighten slightly. Of course. Thoroughness is important. We have prepared a comprehensive proposal for your consideration. She gestured to Thomas Petrovich, who activated a holographic display showing Earth's proposed trade goods. The images rotated slowly, unusual minerals, biological compounds, artistic creations, and technological innovations. Perhaps, Floxy said after a prolonged silence, we might discuss the possibility of forming a committee to evaluate whether these items warrant further examination. Alexis Morgan's eye twitched. Stage 2, facial tics. Representative Carver maintained her composure. We would be happy to provide samples for immediate testing. Dr. Wong has brought molecular analyzers that can demonstrate the properties of our offerings right now. Guild Master Floxy's speech tendrils curled in what I recognized as disapproval. Immediate? Nothing of value happens immediately, human. The committee would need at least 6 cycles to form, another 12 to establish evaluation parameters, then perhaps 20 to begin preliminary assessments. 6 cycles. Omar Bakri interjected. That's nearly 2 Earth years just to form a committee. Floxy turned his eye stalks toward the legal advisor. And is that considered significant to your ephemeral species? How unfortunate. Yeah. I watched in growing alarm as all 5 humans displayed stage 3 signals, controlled breathing. They were each taking deliberate, measured breaths. A technique I'd learned was called counting to 10 in human stress management. Representative Carver spoke carefully. Guildmaster, we respect your traditions and processes. However, Earth's position is unique. We have already established provisional agreements with the Iraqi Confederation and the Prixian hive mind. Those species saw the immediate value in our offerings. This was news to me, and apparently to Guildmaster Floxy, whose speech tendrils froze mid-wave. The Iraqi? He questioned. They haven't accepted new trade partners in over 1,000 cycles. Until now, Carver replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Stage 4, the professional smile. What followed was the most compressed Zentarian decision-making process in recorded history. Within 3 hours, practically light speed by their standards, the Guildmaster had authorized an expedited evaluation protocol and requested samples of all Earth goods. As we left the Zentarian chamber, I stared at Representative Carver with new respect and fear. How did you already secure agreements with the Iraqi and Prixians? They weren't even on your schedule until next week. She winked. We didn't. But the Zentarians don't know that. I searched for the diplomatic term, deceptive. That's negotiation, she corrected. Now, who's next? The Moglevian trade representatives, as it turned out, were even more resistant. Their species evolved from burrowing creatures and retained both the physical characteristics and the hoarding instincts of their ancestors. These terms are unacceptable, huffed Trade Minister Diggin, his sensory whiskers vibrating with agitation. You propose equal exchange rates? Preposterous. The standard for new species is 30% below market value for a minimum of 50 cycles. Dr. Wong leaned forward. Our spectral analysis indicates that the mineral compounds we are offering contain elements completely unknown in cooperative space. 30% below value would be robbery. It would be tradition. Diggin countered, pounding a clawed fist on the table. All new species must prove their commitment. I noticed Thomas Petrovich's jaw muscles tightening. Stage 5, muscle tension. Representative Carver intervened smoothly. Minister Diggin, perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements. Earth understands the importance of tradition, but we also value innovation. The Moglevian's fur bristled. Innovation? A euphemism for disrespect. Your species wishes to circumvent established protocols that have served the cooperative for millennia. Not circumvent, Carver corrected. Improve. For everyone's benefit. Improvement requires proof of value, Diggin insisted. The Moglevian mercantile code is clear. Untested partners pay premium rates. Alexis Morgan muttered something under her breath that my translator couldn't catch, but based on Dr. Wong's surprised expression, it wasn't diplomatic. Perhaps Carver suggested with forced pleasantness, we should take a brief recess to consider our positions. As soon as we were in the privacy of the adjacent chamber, the humans' professional facades cracked. This is ridiculous, Alexis Morgan hissed. Their tradition is just institutionalized exploitation. They are testing us, Omar Bakri observed, seeing how much we will concede. Representative Carver paced the room. Options? Walk away, suggested Petrovich. Show them we don't need them. Counterproductive, Dr. Wong argued. We need all 16 worlds for comprehensive market access. I watched this rapid-fire exchange with fascination. The humans weren't arguing. They were problem-solving at a pace that made my head spin. Officer Puleton, Carver suddenly turned to me. What's the Moglevian weakness? Weakness? I blinked in surprise. I'm not sure what you mean. Every negotiator has a pressure point, she explained. Something they fear losing more than they desire gaining. What's Diggon's? I hesitated. This crossed into ethically questionable territory for a cooperative liaison. On the other hand, the humans were now my responsibility, and their success reflected on me. Minister Diggin, I said carefully, is notorious for his competitive nature. He cannot stand being outdone, especially by his rival, Minister Burrick of the Southern Hemisphere. Carver's eyes lit up. Perfect. When we returned to the negotiation room, Minister Diggin was examining a small pile of gemstones he'd removed from his pocket pouch. A common self-soothing behavior for Moglevians. Minister Representative Carver began with renewed confidence, "We have reconsidered our position. You are absolutely right about tradition and protocol." Diggin looked up suspiciously. "You accept our terms?" "Not exactly," Carver smiled. "We have decided to withdraw our offer from the Northern Hemisphere entirely and focus exclusively on Minister Burrick's territory in the South. His terms were much more reasonable during our preliminary discussions." I froze. There had been no such discussions. This was another bluff. But what a bluff it was! Minister Diggin's whole body went rigid. "Burrick? You have spoken with Burrick?" "We explore all options," Carver replied casually. His enthusiasm for Earth goods was quite refreshing. "Especially for the molecular stabilizers your mining operations so desperately need." Diggin's whiskers twitched frantically. That's unacceptable. The Northern Territories have priority." "Not according to cooperative trade law," Omar Bakri interjected smoothly. Section 47, paragraph 13 clearly states that regional representatives may negotiate independent agreements when central authorities fail to reach reasonable terms. I had no idea if this was accurate, but Diggin clearly didn't either. His fur was now standing completely on end. What terms did Burrick offer?" he asked, trying and failing to sound casual. "I'm afraid that's confidential," Carver replied. "But I can say they were quite favorable, almost suspiciously so. We wondered if perhaps he knew something about the future value of our goods that you don't." That was the breaking point. Within minutes, Minister Diggin had not only matched the imaginary terms offered by his rival but improved upon them. The humans left with an agreement for preferential trade status and expedited shipping routes. In the corridor afterward, I finally found my voice. That was, "I don't have words." "Standard negotiation tactics," Representative Carver said with a shrug. Nothing special. But her satisfaction was short-lived. Our final meeting of the day was with the Vask Confederacy, and it would prove to be the most challenging yet. The Vask were apex predators turned merchants. They maintained the aggressive posturing and territorial instincts of their evolutionary past, channeling them into commercial dominance rather than physical conquest. Their representative, Trade Commander Karvak, was imposing even by Vask standards. Nearly 9 feet tall, covered in armored scales, with 4 eyes that independently tracked different targets. He entered the negotiation chamber flanked by guards bearing ceremonial but very functional plasma spears. So Karvak rumbled without preamble, "Earth seeks access to Vask shipping lanes." Bold, perhaps foolish, Representative Carver wasn't intimidated. "Commander Karvak, thank you for meeting with us. Earth values efficiency and directness, so I will be frank. Your shipping networks are the fastest in the quadrant. We want access." Karvak's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. All species want access. If you earn it, you still maintain it. What would satisfy the Confederacy? Carver asked. Exclusivity, Karvak answered immediately. The Vask do not share prey or partners. You would terminate all other shipping arrangements and route everything through our networks. The human delegation exchanged glances. This demand would nullify half their negotiation efforts. That's not possible, Carver replied firmly. Earth requires multiple transit options to ensure supply chain security. Karvak leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the humans. Then you require nothing from the Vask. Our terms are non-negotiable. I noticed all 5 humans displaying the beginning of Stage 6, the momentary pause. Each became unnaturally still, as if internally debating their next move. It was Dr. Wong who broke the silence. Commander, with respect, that position seems contrary to the Vask Confederacy's own interests. And Karvak turned his upper eyes toward her. Explain. You value strength and dominance, she continued. Yet you are passing up an opportunity to demonstrate both. If you transported Earth goods alongside your competitors, you could prove your superiority through performance rather than monopoly. The vast commander's scales rippled in what I recognized as contemplation. A competition? Exactly, Dr. Wong nodded. May the best shipper win. Unless, she paused deliberately, you are concerned your networks can't outperform the others on merit alone? I held my breath. Questioning Avask's capabilities was either brilliant or suicidal. Karvak stood suddenly, towering over the table. For a terrible moment I thought he might attack. Instead, he let out a booming laugh that reverberated through the chamber. The tiny human has fangs, he declared. Very well. We accept your challenge. The Vask will transport your goods alongside these competitors. And we will demonstrate our supremacy through speed, efficiency, and security. The negotiations continued, with Commander Karvak eventually agreeing to highly favorable terms simply to prove the Vask could outperform any rival. When we finally left the chamber, I was physically exhausted, though the humans seemed barely affected. 3 down, 13 to go, Representative Carver said cheerfully as we headed back to their accommodations. A productive first day. Productive? I echoed incredulously. You have accomplished more in one day than most species do in a standard cycle. You manipulated the Zentarians, bluffed the Moglivians, and challenged the Vask to a competition they can't resist. It's unprecedented. Carver smiled. Just doing our job, Officer Puleton. Tomorrow we will tackle the next 3. About tomorrow, I ventured cautiously. There's been a change to the schedule. The Plebulin Federation has requested a meeting. Specifically, Ambassador Grok wishes to apologize for the incident with Ambassador Thompson. The humans exchanged looks again, some silent communication passing between them. We will handle it, Carver assured me. Diplomatic relations are part of trade relations. The next morning I was a nervous wreck. The Grok incident had barely faded from diplomatic gossip, and now the architect of that disaster wanted a rematch. I arrived early at the meeting chamber, triple-checking all environmental controls and removing anything that could possibly be interpreted as a weapon. Ambassador Grok arrived with an entourage of aides. His moisture membrane was an unusually subdued blue, suggesting caution or possibly fear. The human delegation entered precisely on time, led by Representative Carver in her most formal attire, but they took their seats with professional composure. Ambassador Grok, Carver began, thank you for this opportunity to strengthen relations between our worlds. Grok's membrane pulsated slowly. The Plebulin Federation recognizes the importance of clear communication. Previous interactions may have suffered from misunderstandings. Completely understandable, Carver nodded. Cultural differences can lead to unintended offense. I began to relax. This was going surprisingly well, until Grok spoke again. However, the Federation remains concerned about Earth's accelerated integration into cooperative markets. Your species appears to be using aggressive tactics to secure advantageous positions beyond what is appropriate for new members. And there it was. This wasn't an apology meeting. It was an ambush. I watched Representative Carver's expression shift almost imperceptibly. Ambassador, I'm not sure what you mean by aggressive tactics. We are simply establishing mutually beneficial trade relationships. At unprecedented speed, Grok countered, with terms that undermine established protocols. The Plebulin Federation has served as regulatory overseer for the cooperative markets for 2,000 cycles. We cannot allow a novice species to disrupt delicate economic balances. Alexis Morgan's pen tapped against her datapad. Stage 7, Rhythmic Object Manipulation. With respect, Ambassador Omar Bakri interjected. The cooperative charter guarantees all member species equal market access without discrimination based on membership duration. Technical legalities, Grok dismissed with a wave of his appendage. The Federation is concerned with practical realities. Your species lacks the experience and perspective to participate at the level you are attempting. I noticed Dr. Wong's breathing pattern change. Thomas Petrovich's posture had stiffened. All stage 8 signs, physiological preparation. Representative Carver maintained her diplomatic smile, but her voice took on a new edge. Ambassador Grok, It sounds like you are suggesting Earth should accept inferior positions simply because we are newcomers. That's not how humans operate. Ah, yes, Grok's membrane rippled in what appeared to be amusement. How humans operate. With threats and intimidation, perhaps? Like Ambassador Thompson's disgraceful behavior? The room went silent. I felt my 3 hearts racing. This was deliberately provocative. Ambassador Thompson, Carver replied carefully, responded to repeated provocation. A situation I hope we are not recreating here. Is that a threat, Representative? Grok's membrane darkened. Are you going to become annoyed as well? That's when I saw it. All 5 humans simultaneously straightened in their chairs. Their expressions shifted from diplomatic neutrality to something else. Something focused. Representative Carver placed both hands flat on the table before her. Ambassador Grok, she said in a voice so calm it sent chills down my spine. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The effect was electric. Grok's aides immediately backed toward the exits. The ambassador's moisture membrane went completely still, a danger sign I'd never witnessed before. What Earth wants, Carver continued in that same terrifyingly controlled voice, is fair participation in cooperative markets. What Earth does not want is unnecessary obstruction based on outdated hierarchies. She leaned forward slightly. The Plebulon Federation oversees regulatory compliance, yes? Then you should be concerned with rule violations, not with who benefits from the rules as written. Unless, of course, the Federation has been selectively enforcing those rules to maintain certain advantages for established members. Grok's membrane paled. That is a serious accusation. Not an accusation, Carver corrected. An observation. And one that Earth's data analysts would be very interested in investigating further. I wonder what patterns they might find if they examined 2,000 cycles of regulatory decisions. Omar Bakri smoothly opened his datapad. We could start with the suspicious correlation between Federation oversight appointments and favorable trade variances for Plebulon-affiliated worlds, or the statistical anomalies in inspection frequencies for competitors to Plebulon Industries, added Alexis Morgan. I watched in amazement as the humans systematically dismantled the Federation's regulatory credibility with data points they couldn't possibly have had time to compile. Yet they presented their case with such confidence that even I found myself convinced. Ambassador Grok's membrane had gone from pale blue to almost transparent, the Plebulon equivalent of breaking into a cold sweat. These speculations are baseless, he stammered. Then you won't mind if we present them to the Cooperative Council for investigation, Carver replied with a predatory smile. Unless, of course, the Federation would prefer to focus on legitimate regulatory concerns rather than Earth's market entry strategies. What followed was the most rapid diplomatic retreat I'd ever witnessed. Within minutes, Ambassador Grok was not only withdrawing all objections to Earth's trade initiatives but offering the Federation's full support and regulatory guidance for human commercial enterprises. As the Plebulons hastily exited the chamber, I turned to Representative Carver in awe. You didn't actually have evidence of regulatory misconduct, did you? Carver's predatory expression melted into a mischievous grin. Let's just say we had reasonable suspicions based on historical patterns. Sometimes that's enough. But the risk, I protested. If he had called your bluff. Humans are very good at calculated risks, she replied. And at recognizing when someone has something to hide. Grok's reaction told us everything we needed to know. In the following days, the human delegation blazed through their remaining negotiations with unprecedented success. Word had spread through diplomatic channels about the Plebulon confrontation, and suddenly species that had planned elaborate delaying tactics were surprisingly accommodating. By the end of their 2-week mission, Earth had secured trade agreements with all 16 target worlds on terms that senior cooperative economists described as suspiciously favorable. On their final day, as I escorted the delegation back to their ship, Representative Carver turned to me with genuine warmth. Officer Puleton, we couldn't have done this without you. Your insights were invaluable. I fluttered my secondary arms in embarrassed gratitude. I merely provided context. You did the actual negotiating. Teamwork, she insisted. Earth values its allies. As they prepared to board, I found myself asking the question that had puzzled me throughout their visit. Representative Carver, may I ask something personal? About humans? Of course. The phrase, now I'm actually getting annoyed, why does it carry such weight? What does it truly signify? Carver considered this thoughtfully. It's a line in the sand. Humans spend enormous energy adapting to others, compromising, finding middle ground. We are actually quite accommodating most of the time. But that phrase marks the moment when accommodation ends. It's a warning, added Dr. Wong, not of emotional loss of control, but of its opposite. It means the human has decided that resolving the situation takes priority over maintaining harmony. It means the gloves are coming off, Petrovich said with a grin. I still looked confused, so Alexis Morgan tried another approach. And think of it this way, most species evolved with clear warning signals, bright colors, loud sounds, distinctive postures. Humans didn't. We look basically the same whether we are happy or furious. So we developed verbal warnings instead. And the most dangerous thing about humans, Omar Bakri concluded, is that when we say we are annoyed, we are not threatening what we might do if we lose control. We are informing you of what we are about to do with perfect control. As I watched their ship depart, I updated my report to Galactic Central with one final observation. The humans have established themselves as a commercial power within the cooperative in record time, using methods that defied conventional diplomatic practice. Their success was not despite their emotional nature, as many species assumed, but because of it. They have weaponized patience as effectively as impatience, restraint as effectively as action. And when a human says they are actually getting annoyed, it does not signal weakness or loss of control. It signals that they have made a decision, and that decision is no more playing nice. Now, whenever any diplomat or trader encounters a human representative who utters those fateful words, you will find beings of all species suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. Because the galaxy has learned what I discovered firsthand, when humans say they are getting annoyed, they are not losing their composure. They are finding their focus. And that, my friends, is the most terrifying thing of all.